It's that time of the week when former football and sports stars share their stories. It happens all right here, right now, on Thursday Night Tailgate. With your hosts, Chris-Mascaro and bob-lazzari. Guys, have some fun. Enjoy the guests. Take it away.
Hey, thank you, Joe. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate, your home of the NFL Alumni Association and the Gridiron Greats. TNT is brought to you by the great folks over at Kyvan Foods, Coastal Orthopedics, the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, and the French Lick Resort. I'm your host, Chris Mascaro, and tonight my co-host, Bob Lazzari, and I have 6 great guests that we are looking forward to sharing with you. First up tonight, we're excited to have former head coach Dan Reeves back with us. This is going to be Coach Reeves' third appearance with us on the show, and we've always really enjoyed getting the time to talk with him, hearing his insights and his stories. We'll get his thoughts on the 3 teams that he coached, the Broncos, Giants, and Falcons, plus a little bit of talk about his alma mater, the University of South Carolina, and a whole lot more when Coach joins us about 15 minutes from now. Then former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins, you know he joins us every week in his regular time slot around 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll talk to Tony this week about Bill Belichick's legacy, with the New England Patriots, with the shadow of Spygate and Deflategate that sort of hangs over his tenure. Plus, we'll talk about how quarterback controversies have an impact on the team. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more when Tony joins us about 30 minutes from now. Following him, we'll get a return visit from former Steelers and Jaguars defensive back Ainsley Battles, and it has been far too long since Ainsley's been a part of the show. We'll talk to him about his playing days at Vanderbilt, plus what it was like playing on both sides of a once very fierce divisional rivalry between the Steelers and the Jaguars in the old AFC Central Division. So Ainsley will be with us a little bit later in this half hour, so we look forward to catching up with him. We'll kick off hour number 2 with former University of Florida and Tampa Bay Bucs star wide receiver Reidel Anthony. And Reidel is, he played for Florida back in their fun and gun days under Steve Spurrier. So we'll talk about that. He was in Tampa when Tony Dungy took over that team. So we'll talk about that. Plus a whole lot more. Reidel will be with us a little bit over an hour from now. Following him, we'll get a return visit from former Steelers guard John Malecki. John was recently featured in a video by Titleist, of all people. They did a short video in conjunction with the U.S. Open last week at Oakmont. So we'll talk about that, plus get his memories of being in training camp with the Steelers up in Latrobe, plus his custom furniture business, which, by the way, folks, is absolutely fantastic. If you haven't seen the furniture that John builds, holy smokes, you need to go to his website, johnmalecki.com, to check it out. He'll talk with us about that and a whole lot more when he's here about 90 minutes from now. And then we'll round out the show by talking to Jeff Pearlman. Jeff has written several books, including one that is very painful to both Bob and I, called The Bad Guys Won, about the 1986 Mets, which was a very dark time for Red Sox fans. He's also got a book coming out a little bit later this year called Gunslinger about Brett Favre. He's written several other books about Walter Payton and Roger Clemens. The 1980s Lakers called Showtime, plus a few more. And he's written for all kinds of sites, ESPN.com, CNN, The Bleacher Report. You've seen Jeff's work a lot of places. So we'll talk about all of those things when Jeff joins us a little bit later in the next hour. So we are jam-packed here tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate. We're going to have a lot of fun, so sit back, relax, and let us take your mind off everything going on in your life for the next couple of hours. But let's kick things off by bringing in my co-host, Mr. Bob Lazzari. Bob, how are you tonight, my friend?
Hi, Chris. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic, thank you. Particularly on the heels of we talk about the Red Sox later with Jeff, but particularly on the heels of a nice Red Sox win in extras today.
It was nice to see, Chris, a day game, a long game, and it's just amazing that Mr. Bogarts gets his 2 hits every day, and he's turning into be, Chris, my goodness, we knew a few years ago, and we talked about him a lot. We knew he was going to be one of the best players in baseball. Well, we just knew he had the upside, the potential to be. And guess what?
Right.
He's probably in the top 5 right now. The way he's playing right now, and I just, I love the way he carries himself, Chris, and that's what I'm most impressed with. And being the positive show that we are, he is a guy that maybe some of these young kids can look up to. At least that's our hope, right?
Yeah, as Red Sox fans, we hate all things Yankees, but we do have respect for a guy that wore number 2 on the Yankees for many, many years, in Derek Jeter, and we're sort of hoping that Xander Bogaerts ends up being a very similar. If we could have 2/3 of what Derek Jeter was to the Yankees, and for the number of years he was so great. Hopefully what we're seeing is the budding of a new great number 2 playing shortstop, this time in Boston as opposed to being in New York.
Yeah, they really needed that one today, and it was good. Again,
Yes.
that 10-game over 500 threshold that I often talk about, they still got a ways to go now to get back there. But, hey, tomorrow's another day, right?
That's right. And Bob and I talk Red Sox with our good friend Dave Radigan every Tuesday night. You can hear us from 7 to 8 o'clock on View from the Lone Red Seat. You can stream or download that show over on Blog Talk Radio. So check us out if you're a Red Sox fan. Bob, I want to start off our time tonight by getting your thoughts on a couple of things going on around the league this week. First, we've heard for the last couple of years about the Bills, potentially moving to Toronto, and they put all of that to rest when Terry Pegula, bought the team and committed to keeping them in Buffalo. But now it looks like the league, this is the interesting part, Bob. The league is telling Pegula that they need a new stadium in Buffalo, which is very different from what we normally see, which is owners holding a city hostage, threatening to leave if they don't build them a new stadium. The Bills have been playing in Ralph Wilson Stadium, formerly Rich Stadium, since 1973, and Terry Pegula said earlier this week that the league is saying one thing that they, that they need a new stadium, but hey, it's, to his credit, he's not doing anything rash, and they're just sort of going to evaluate the situation. You may recall a couple of years ago, 2014, the taxpayers and the Bills invested $130 million to renovate the stadium, and their current lease runs through 2022. So, Bob, your thoughts on the league telling the Bills that they need a better stadium?
Very, very interesting, Chris. When the NFL speaks like that, and we know the NFL is all about making money, when they give you kind of a hint like that, they might be likely to throw some money into the pot and you change your mind. It's got to be in the NFL's interest. And since they've done that, that it's probably a possibility. But you're right. When you examine this story, you get the idea that Pegula is not really in that much of a hurry. He'll take it a little at a time. I mean, like you said, Chris, just a couple of years ago, all those renovations, I remember it was almost like a new place as far as the inside. They had wider concourses, easier to get into the place. This is what you want in the stadium, and now $130 million doesn't seem much, and that's crazy too. I mean, we know stadiums out there that were still being played in that were made for that much money, but they did that much renovations just a couple years ago. But I couldn't get over, Chris, that Rich Stadium is 43 years old. Isn't that incredible? I mean, I remember War Memorial Stadium, early 70s, Rich, O.J. Simpson and Dennis Shaw, but that was the old War Memorial Stadium. So, but 43 years in a stadium, think about it, Chris. 20 years now is almost the shelf life for a lot of places. So this will be interesting. I don't think, their lease goes through 2022, so we may be looking at something 5-6 years down the road.
Yeah, and to your point, Bob, being down here in Atlanta, right? The TED where the Braves play, that's no good. That's 1996, right? So that's done, right? Next year the Braves move into a brand new stadium a little further north of the city. The Georgia Dome, that's a little bit later than that. That's no good now. So they got to build Mercedes-Benz Stadium right across, the parking lot there. So it's interesting. To your point, boy, if you get to a stadium that's 20 or 30 years old, that's no good anymore. We got to tear that down. We got to build a new one. Kudos, I guess, really to the Buffalo area that they've held on to, Ralph Wilson Stadium since '73. That's got to be the oldest stadium in all of Major League Sports.
That's a good point, Chris. And for the NFL to kind of give them a hand, that kind of gives you an idea how much money is locked up in the NFL. You don't hear MLB, which is not poor. You don't hear MLB going to Anaheim and Kansas City saying, it's time. No, they kind of leave it in the hands of the other people. But this is interesting. 43 years, those fans up there are great. And
right.
We don't know whether it would be in Orchard Park or downtown Buffalo, but there's nothing quite like watching a game in December in Buffalo, that's for sure.
Right.
Ask Angelo,
and Bob,
right?
Yeah, exactly right. And our friend Christine Lisi as well.
Yeah.
Bob, the other thing I wanted to get your thought on was Adrian Peterson's comments about the grind of training camp and OTAs being the thing that would likely get him to retire. He said he believes he'll lose his mental edge way before he loses his, his physical edge, if you will, or that part of his game deteriorates. And he makes some really good points when he's talking about it. When you think about all of the extra punishment the players absorbed during training camp and preseason games. AP pointed out that, when he returned from his ACL injury back in 2012, he didn't go through all that extra hitting in training camp. Instead, he worked out and prepared himself for the regular season. And then that year, he goes on to rush for nearly 2,100 yards. So, Bob, the league is trying to cut down on injuries and protect players. We've heard that rhetoric now for the last few years. Is it really time for the league to really think about getting rid of preseason games altogether so we can get rid of, the opportunity for, players to, get injured and be lost, whether it's for a game or sometimes the whole season in meaningless games. Plus, it gives the players the opportunity to save all that extra wear and tear on their bodies.
It's a great question, Chris. About 10, 15 years ago, I would say to you probably, no, let's keep it the way it is. But we talk weekly on this show of how physical the league has gotten, how bigger and faster these guys have gotten.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, Chris. Those games right now, and there's guys still trying to win jobs. It's going to be rough. And you're just, how many guys, you always see it yearly, that guys that do get hurt during the preseason, and it kind of carries over throughout the year, and they never really can recover. Now, Peterson, this is a Hall of Fame guy. I don't think there's any question. He wants a shot at the all-time record. I don't know if he can. I mean, he's 31 years old, and he'd have to play at least another 4 years. And we know he's a punishing kind of guy, Chris. It's a brutal game, but I'm like you. I was reading that article, and I'm saying to myself, he does make some good points. It starts in July. It's tough mentally. You got the OTAs now, meetings and appearances, and a guy like this who would rather spend his time working out and kind of just strengthening his body for that long run, better known as the NFL season, makes a good point. But interesting to see what will happen. He's a guy, when he speaks, people tend to listen, and he's definitely a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, agreed. And I think he does make an awful lot of good points. It's just, every year we see, guys that, and I know, my Steelers, guys get injured, nicked up, miss a game or two, sometimes a whole season. If you're Marquise Pouncey, who gets, who's had a lot of injuries, it just seems like, let's save these guys, all the extra hits of preseason games. Let's save their bodies, and maybe we could, see more of our stars play more games, every season. And really, they're meaningless games. Yeah, guys trying to earn jobs, absolutely. But earn the jobs, whether it's in practice scrimmages, in preparing for the season, in your own training camp, if you've got an opportunity there to catch the coach's eye, which guys do. And, some of these, and they play scrimmages against one another and all that sort of stuff. So there's your opportunity. I just, I think it's time that we move away from preseason games and, save the injuries, again, like we say, in meaningless games.
Like the Pro Bowl, right, Chris, which we talk about a lot.
Bob, before we get into the show, who do you and Tony D'Angelo have coming up on your show, Monday Night Sports Talk?
Well, Chris, we were scheduled to do a show next Monday, the 27th, but then, believe it or not, I was comped some tickets to Yankee Stadium.
Good for you. Good for you.
I'm not going to pay $140 to go to a Yankee game, but I was comped them, and they're good seats. So Tony and I will be making a pilgrimage down to the Bronx on that day. So we will be off till July 11th, that means. So, we'll try to see what we can. There's nobody scheduled yet, but 'tis the season where you just make a few phone calls and you get a baseball guy on. But, our next live show will be 7-11. But, day game Monday against the Texas Rangers, Chris. So it'll be pretty – we usually do one a year and go broke, and then we stay home the rest of the year.
That's great. All right, everyone, like we do here every week on Thursday Night Tailgate, we want to send out a big hello and an even bigger thank you to our military personnel listening in around the world on the Armed Forces Radio Network. We can't say thank you enough for doing what you do to protect all of us in our way of life. For everyone else listening in, we thank you as well for doing so, and we hope you'll join us in thanking our brave men and women serving to protect our freedoms in the military. If you see a member of our military, out and about, whether you're in the airport, on the streets, at a restaurant, wherever you might be, please stop for a moment and tell them thank you. They've earned our gratitude and our respect, and they are our true heroes. We also want to thank our veterans for your service and the sacrifices that you and your families have made for us over the years. Big thank you as well to Sean Cruz and all the wonderful folks over at the Armed Forces Radio Network. It is such an honor for us to have Thursday Night Tailgate be a part of your network. You can find our show by going to armedforcesradionetwork.org. And veterans, please continue to check out globalvoiceforveterans.org, a great site with a wealth of news and articles that you're going to find both interesting and beneficial to you. Again, it's globalvoiceforveterans.org. TNT is brought to you by the great folks over at Kyvan Foods, owned by our good friend and former Falcons and Bengals tight end and TNT Hall of Famer Reggie Kelly. If you want to be king of the grill this summer, it is a must that you use Kyvan Sweet Barbecue Sauce, ranked number 15 in the world right now by Barbecue Superstars. This barbecue sauce is a must for the big games, for your tailgating needs. It's available at select Walmarts and Kroger's throughout the eastern half of the country. For locations, online orders, and recipes, check out their website at Kyvan82.com. And Kyvan is spelled Kyvan. If your local Walmart doesn't carry the Kyvan Sweet Barbecue Sauce, well, request it. I'm sure they'll be happy to add it to their shelves for you. TNT is also sponsored by Dr. Peter Candelara and the great folks over at Coastal Orthopedics. Folks, you hear us talking about it every single week here on Thursday Night Tailgate. If you're suffering quietly, or maybe not so quietly, from joint pain, well, stop and do what the Gridiron Greats do to get relief, and that's contact Coastal Orthopedics. They can help get you back to enjoying life. For more information, check them out online at bone-dr.com. Baseball season, we're almost to the halfway point now, and if you love the game, you and your family are going to love the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. What a very cool place for everyone in the family, because you get to walk the live production line and you see the bats being manufactured right there in front of you. You got a lot of cool exhibits throughout the museum. Right now, the Ripley's Believe It or Not exhibit has some very bizarre baseball treasures that you get to check out. They recently unveiled their life-size statue of Jackie Robinson, which is amazing. And don't miss the Bat Vault. If you listen to the show, you hear me bragging about this Bat Vault every single week here on Thursday Night Tailgate, because you get to actually hold game-used bats from so many of the game's greatest legends. To find out more information about the museum and to book your visit, go to sluggermuseum.com. You also hear us talking about our friends over at the French Lick Resort here. What a fantastic place. If you love golf, or you just love to find a place to simply relax and enjoy life, well, you're not going to find a better place than the French Lick Resort. And if you've ever wondered what it's like to play in a major golf tournament, well, you can do it year-round there on their Pete Dye course. It's the home of last season's Senior PGA Championship and the LPGA Legends Championship. They also have the Donald Ross design course there on the property, site of Walter Hagen's PGA Championship victory back in 1924. Got a great spa. And, oh, by the way, my friends, a casino right there on the property as well. To find out more information and to book your stay, go to FrenchLick.com. And please don't forget our friends over at the Gridiron Greats organization, the one started up by Mike Ditka. Please help support a wonderful cause that's taking care of the guys who literally left so much of themselves out on the field. Remember, folks, these are the guys who played way back before, there was six-figure salaries, let alone 7 or 8-figure salaries. These guys still had to get jobs in the offseason to support themselves and their families. It's organizations like this one, started by Mike Ditka, the Gridiron Greats, that are there trying to help the guys that we all grew up watching, reading, and rooting for. Please go to gridirongreats.org to see what you can do to get involved. All right, now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Dan Reeves. Let me remind you about Coach Reeves' background. He was born in Rome, Georgia, grew up in Americus, Georgia, where he played football, baseball, and basketball. He played his college ball at the University of South Carolina, setting several records as a quarterback, and he also played right field on their baseball team. When he left South Carolina, he was their all-time leading passer. He was inducted into the Gamecocks Hall of Fame in 1977 and the South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame in 2006. If you can believe it, he was an undrafted free agent signed by the Dallas Cowboys in 1965, but he also got an offer from the San Diego Chargers of the AFL and my hometown Pittsburgh Pirates to play baseball. He opted to play running back with the Cowboys from 1965 to 1972, rushing for nearly 2,000 yards, and he scored 25 touchdowns. He added nearly 1,700 more receiving yards and 17 receiving touchdowns. He was a part of the Cowboys' 1971 Super Bowl championship team, and he went on to become one of the greatest coaches in the NFL with the Broncos, Giants, and Falcons, leading his teams to a 190, 165-2 record, and including 4 Super Bowl appearances. He's become a wonderful friend of the show, and we are very honored that he is back with us again tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate. Good evening, Coach. Chris and Bob here. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Welcome, guys. Great. Thanks, Bob. Chris, appreciate it. Good to be with you.
Thank you.
So, Coach, I wanted to start tonight by getting your thoughts on your alma mater, the University of South Carolina. Looking back to last season, struggled a bit, when they finished 3-9, and they're about to embark on their first full season in the post-Steve Spurrier era. Another former University of Florida head coach, Will Muschamp, is going to be taking over that team, who just happens to be from your hometown of Rome, Georgia, as well. So, kind of curious to get your thoughts and feelings about the program and where it's at.
Well, Steve did a great job. There's no question. His recruiting there, turning the program into what it's been over the last few years, and certainly struggled, last year. But, Steve has really put the Gamecocks there where we were really proud of the job that he did. And, Will Muschamp has been in the Southeastern Conference. He knows a lot about it. If you look at what Florida did last year with a new coach, a lot of those guys are there because of Coach Muschamp. So I think he'll do a great job. We were looking forward to seeing what he can do.
And, Coach, nowadays, do you enjoy sitting back and watching games, or is it hard as a former coach sort of, to watch and not, pick things apart or get frustrated, whether it's you're watching South Carolina or one of the teams that you used to coach, wondering why they did this or that?
Well, I tell you, it's really fun. College football has always been fun for me to watch. I love, college football. So, that's not much different. The pro football, there's no question I enjoy it because I've got so many friends that I, either coach with or played with that are still involved in the National Football League. So I got a lot of teams that I can, have a right to pull for, but, it makes it fun. And I enjoy it, but I probably do a good job of second guessing, just like most fans do. It's easy to do it after the play is over. It's easy to second guess.
Indeed. So, Coach, do you get to spend any time, whether it's locally here with the Falcons or any of the other teams that you've been a part of, consulting with them still?
Well, I still do a local radio show on Sunday and Monday. Covering the Falcons, so I get involved with that, and looking forward to that. It's always fun to follow your local team, and still live in the Atlanta area, so we're all pulling for the Falcons, and to be able to cover them on Sunday, and then also to cover them and talk about it after the game is it's been fun for me.
Bob, questions for Coach?
Coach, it's great to talk to you again, and hope everything is well. And we had mentioned, and Chris had mentioned before, Coach, about your versatility as an all-around athlete in high school. And almost weekly, Dan, we have a lot of guys that come on the show, and we ask them the same question. Does their success in the NFL come from the fact that they were able to be an all-around athlete, that they played other sports? It seems so many kids are almost robotically, Coach, becoming just football players or just basketball players these days. Is it that specialized now where you have to kind of stick to one, or do you still respect and would rather have those overall guys who have played every sport?
Well, there's no question. If I would rather, if you had a choice, I would rather see, guys play all the sports. That was fun for me. Whatever was in season, to be able to play football and basketball and then baseball, was something that I thoroughly enjoyed. And, now, like you said, the guys have to make a decision. And very early that, I just don't like that. I wish they could play all three sports. And, I still think you have time to develop and become good at whatever sport you enjoy the most.
And, Coach, when you played in Dallas for the Cowboys under Landry, you were asked to do an awful lot. I mean, you ran the ball, you threw the ball a little bit. I mean, you caught 80 passes combined in 66-67. Was this a Tom Landry thing, Coach, that you had to be very versatile, very team-oriented, because you basically were called on to do everything that a running back could do within those years in the 60s?
The funny thing about it is you talk about playing all these sports, and I did, and I enjoyed it. Prior to going to the Dallas Cowboys, the only time I ever played running back was when I was a freshman in high school, and we went up to Macon, Georgia to play a game, and at that time I was playing tight end. And the guy that was one of the starting running backs, so we had a right halfback and a left halfback, forgot his shoes, left them back at home, and the coach came to me and said, I want you to play halfback. And I thought, boy, this would be great. I get to carry the football. And he said, yeah, when the left halfback carries it, I want you to be the right halfback. And when the right halfback carries it, I want you to be the left halfback. So I was a halfback that didn't carry the ball. That's the only experience I had playing running back until I went to training camp with the Dallas Cowboys, and they signed me as a defensive back. And we ended up scrimmaging the Los Angeles Rams. A bunch of guys got hurt prior to the scrimmage, and I ended up getting to play, in the scrimmage at the running back position and, was able to play decently. And Coach Landry, gave me a chance to play the running back position along with special teams, which was, something that I think helped me make the team was, playing all the special teams. So, it was something that Coach Landry saw in me and gave me a chance to play. And, I was with a really good team with Don Meredith at quarterback, Don Perkins at fullback, Bob Hayes at wide receiver. We had some pretty good players.
And, Coach, I want to take you back to that time as I was looking back over some of the stats that you had and some of the games that you played in with the Cowboys. November 5th, 1967. You happened to be playing, at home against the Falcons, and you guys won that game 37-7, and you scored 4 touchdowns in that game, 2 receiving, 2 rushing. And I imagine it had to be a big thrill for you to have such a big game, and then have it be against the team from your home state. Curious what you remember about that game.
Well, there's no question. It was a big surprise, really. I mean, I'd scored touchdowns before, but never 4 in one ball game. And, my son was born the day before that, and that made it kind of an extra thrill, for me. But if you look at it, they weren't very long runs. They were pretty close to the goal line, and I'd got a chance to get it in the end zone. And like I said, we were a really good football team in '67. That's the year of the Ice Bowl where we got beat, by the Green Bay Packers when Bart Starr ran his little quarterback sneak. So we had a good team that year, and I was just fortunate to be a part of it.
And, Coach, as as you talk about doing a local show here about the Falcons, curious to get your thoughts on them. Last season got off to a very hot start, and under new head coach Dan Quinn. They were 5-0 at the beginning of the season. Unfortunately, went 3-8 from there. What do you think they need to do differently or better to be able to compete with the Carolina Panthers this upcoming season?
Well, I think they've got to get better up front, offensive and defensive line, protecting. Matt Ryan is going to be a real key, as it is for most teams. The quarterback's got to be able to have a protection to be able to, to do the job that he needs to do. And he's got a lot of weapons, but you got to have, that protection first, and then also get the running game going. So, I think up front there, and then defensively, it always helps if you can put pressure on the other quarterback and stop the running game, force them into some passing situations. And I think Dan Quinn has got a chance. This is his second year of having his staff on the type of players that he needs, and they've made some acquisitions that I think are going to help him, and it's going to be interesting to see, how they come out and, if they can sustain it. They did it early in the year, but just didn't sustain it throughout the year.
And, Coach, a story that just, won't seem to go away is the whole Deflategate thing. And I'm just curious to get, you've been around the league for a long time. So is it a big deal? Is it as much of a big deal as it's being made out to be? Did things like that go on when you were playing and when you were coaching around the league?
No, I don't think so, that it went on. I do think that quarterbacks like to have a ball with a certain bit of tackiness, where you could at least grip it. It's very difficult sometimes, to throw a new football. And so, there probably was some things going on as far as that. But, it's a rule, and you need to live by the rules. And certainly if, you're doing something illegal, it shouldn't be allowed. As far as that goes, how big a deal is, I don't think it's that big a deal, for it to happen, other than you going against, what the rules are. Shouldn't do that. But, I think some of the other things that they did as far as substitution and so forth, have to be looked at, and I think have been looked at this offseason. That causes the defense a lot more problems than, what the ball was inflated at.
Bob, a couple more for Coach before we let him go?
Sure, Coach. In your coaching career yourself, when you retired as a player, basically went right into coaching, so it was more tutelage under Landry. Did you have the coaching bug as soon as you stopped playing, Dan, or was it one of these deals where it became more and more clear to you that I could do this for a long time and I have the background under Landry?
No, really and truly, Coach Landry saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. I tore my knee up in 68, got beat out in 69 by Calvin Hill. I knew my career was coming to an end. And, after that season, Coach Landry asked me if I'd be interested in being a player coach. And I never thought about it. And, took him up on it. Was a player coach in 70. We went to our first Super Bowl, got beat. I was a player coach in 71. Same thing, we went to the Super Bowl and finally won our first Super Bowl. So I got into coaching at a really good time. And, when I got out of coaching, I stayed out of coaching for 1 year, and I realized how much I missed it. And Coach Landry fortunately, I was able to be hired back by Coach Landry. And being an assistant under him, I learned from one of the best ones you could possibly learn from. And from that, got a chance to, to be a head coach in Denver.
And speaking of Denver, Coach, I got to mention John Elway, incredible athlete in his own right in various sports. But we know all about his on-the-field antics and how Hall of Fame career, et cetera. Are you surprised? It's probably not an intelligent question, but are you surprised the success he went on to have as an executive? It's like the guy could do no wrong.
Well, I'm not surprised. John has been around football his whole life. His dad was a great football coach and, had a great feel for it. So he's been around it. I think he went about it the right way, got out, was involved in the Arena League football. So he got a little bit of feeling of the front office part of it. So I think he's done a great job, of learning what he needed to do. And then you can tell, getting the job that he's done there in Denver has just been incredible. So it doesn't surprise me. John's an outstanding football mind and, has a great feel for the game.
And, Coach, one last one before we let you go. We've had a few players from your Denver Broncos teams on this show, and we've particularly enjoyed getting to know Michael Brooks, who you coach with both the Broncos and the Giants. I'm just curious to get your thoughts on Michael.
Oh, I tell you, he was a great linebacker. We were fortunate to be able to get him, in Denver, and Michael came in and was the type of player that we saw on film. He just raised it to another level. Then to be able to have him again with the Giants was just a great experience. Those are the kind of players that make you a good football coach.
Hey, Coach, remind our listeners, you talked about your show here locally in Atlanta. How can our listeners find you, stay up to date with all the great things you're doing?
Well, I mean, I think you can go online. They must, because people send me pictures all the time that I've never seen before to get them autographed. So I think you can go online, probably just go into Dan Reeves, and it'll give you an idea of what I'm doing. But just locally, it's a local radio station, 680 The Fan in Atlanta, that I do the show during the season.
Coach, thank you so much for taking time out of your night again to be a part of the show. Always so great for Bob and I to get the opportunity to speak with you. I hope you'll come back again during the season and share more of your stories and insights with us. It's always fantastic to get some time with you.
Truly an honor.
Pleasure for me, guys. I enjoy it. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Coach. All the best to you and your family.
Take care.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
That's former head coach Dan Reeves and former Dallas Cowboys, running back as well. And Bob, you want to talk about a guy who, had to, you were making the point early on, all around great athlete. I mean, that's probably something that not enough people know about Coach Reeves. Not only great football player, but played baseball and basketball as well. And he was certainly well-rounded, and what a great football mind as well.
Yes, Chris, and I was very young watching him as a player. But I remember his versatility because my father would point it out. My father was one of these guys, think about it. He grew up as Paul Hornung and watching guys those are the kind of guys my father just loved, versatile guys who could do everything. And Reeves was one of them. And again, went through the coaching ranks with some great pedigree, and the rest speaks for itself. 200 wins, and I think I could speak on behalf of you, Chris. We will never find a classier guy, very spiritual guy, and is always so kind to come on. And we're honored to have a guy like him on, as we are many others.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly right. I get very excited when I know Coach is going to be a part of the show. Such an honor to speak to someone who is just great for so many years. And you're right. We are very blessed to have so many great guests on the show and so many repeat guests to come back and be a part of the show. But Dan Reeves is right at the top of that list.
Right.
All right, we've got our next guest, Tony Collins, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Tony on the other side of this station identification.
This is Christine Lisi, and you're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate, where NFL stars go to tell their stories with Chris-Mascaro and Bob-Lazzari on the Armed Forces Radio Network.
And now back with us on the Kaiven Foods guest line in his regular weekly time slot is former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins. Hey, Tony, how are you tonight, my friend?
Tony.
I'm doing fantastic. How you doing, Chris, Bob?
All right.
Hey,
So,
I was listening to Coach Reeves, man. I got an opportunity to play in the golf tournament with him down in Atlanta a few months back, and what a class act guy he is, man. He's a legend, man. I'm telling you, that's one of a kind right there.
Yes, sir.
Who is?
So, Tony, I wanted to start our time tonight by talking to you about quarterback controversies, and I'm curious. We've got a few first-round picks like Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, in particular, who have made some incumbent starters a little nervous, whether it was by the mere fact that they were drafted or now that they've shown up in camp. And you've talked recently about Tony Eason, you guys drafted in '83. Curious to get your thoughts. Was it hard on Grogan? Or was there a brewing quarterback controversy, when Tony was drafted? And, could you feel that? Was that a sort of a palpable thing that impacted the team?
Well, the big thing was, I think I talked about it before, the big thing was everybody was wondering why in the hell we picked Tony Eason before Dan Marino. That was the big thing. So, I mean, that was the whole talk. Forget about Steve Grogan. Everybody was thinking about Dan Marino. But when Tony came in, I mean, Tony was a good-sized kid, and he had some happy feet. Grogan was still our number one guy for Tony's rookie season. Steve got hurt. Steve got hurt, and Tony stepped up, and he played well. I mean, he played pretty well, and so then when Steve got healthy, Steve was his backup, but as a rookie quarterback coming into the NFL, man, it's probably one of the toughest positions to come in as a rookie to play. You don't have too many come in and do a fantastic job. And there's a few and far. You got your Peyton Mannings and your Cam Newtons, and Andrew Luck came in and done a fantastic job. But the buck kind of stops right there. You just can't see anybody else coming in and just doing just a great job. John Elway came in, he played well. I mean, but there wasn't anything that they were tearing up the league as a rookie. So it's one of the hardest positions to come in and play. And so when Tony came in, Steve was our guy, because we know Steve was tough. We knew Steve wasn't going to have the happy feet. And then when Steve went down, it was really the coach's decision. So you try to go with what the coaches want, and we all felt, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the players, not just me, we felt that Steve should have started the Super Bowl as well. We can't say if we would have won if Steve would have started. You never know what would have happened. But Tony was he was trying to get away from that Bears defense that day.
and Tony, you mentioned the story about Marino in the past, and you got an opportunity in 1990 to be around Dan and be with the Dolphins for a little bit. Did you ever talk to Dan about, boy, we sure wish we'd have picked you a few years ago?
I never had that conversation with him, but Dan was a class act as well, man. Dan was he was so competitive. Playing that year with him, he hated when anybody dropped his ball. I remember Dupe and Mark Duper and Clayton, they would maybe drop the ball a couple of times, and he would get in their faces, man. He was so competitive, and he had such a quick release. Dan was probably one of a kind in that aspect of as a quarterback. I mean, he's one that he came in and he played well, and so it was totally different, man. Because when I got to play with Dan, he was a true veteran. Then he was 6, 7, 8 years in 6 or 7, 8 years in the league. So he was definitely and one of he's one of those quarterbacks that that's going to come around not so often, and that's the category that he's in. You look at that group that came out that year with Tony and Dan, and I think it was there was a bunch of them. John Elway was in that group. I think was John Elway in that group.
Yep.
Yeah, Elway was in that group. Man, there was a bunch of guys in that group where those guys went on and did some great things. I think Kelly was even in that group. I'm not sure. I think he went to the Yeah, so it was crazy, man. It was a quarterback draft that year, and I was telling you, we when some of those teams didn't take Marino, we thought we had Marino, man, and the Sullivans wanted Tony Eason for some reason.
Bob, questions for Tony?
Yeah, Tony, I want to take us back to Chris and I had talked before you came on about Adrian Peterson's quotes about the mental aspect of what the NFL can take out of you in a season. He talked, Tony, about all the OTAs and the preseason meetings and the mini camps and appearances and all of this. He seemed to he came up with the word boring in a way where it could actually take something mentally off of you, Tony. And I know you want to be a good teammate and everything. And he says I could probably do better just working on my body for that tough NFL upcoming season. But what are your comments about that? Does it really, really grate on you, or is it probably worse now than it was when you played?
It's definitely a lot worse now because we didn't have OTAs. we didn't even have that. We had a mini camp that we came in for a week, maybe 2 weeks. I think it was only a week. We only had mini camp. But a lot of guys, if they stayed in the area, we kind of worked out on our own. We didn't have any type of time where we had to go in at all. A lot of guys left New England after the season was over. They left and they went to their different cities and they worked out in their different cities. And when minicamp came, they came up for minicamp and then after minicamp was over for that week, they went back home and then training camp starts, and that's how it was for us. And now, you got OTAs, you got all these different things, you got all this media stuff. It's to me, I love football, man. I can still see that for me it would have still been a lot of fun even now doing the OTAs and doing that stuff. One of the things that I tell kids all the time, you got to learn to love to practice. One of the things that I love to do, I love practicing because I know because that's how you get better, by practicing. And so that was one of the things that I really love to do. And you got to learn to love to do that, because if you don't learn to love to practice, man, you're not going to stay in the league for a long time. And so, but now it's just so much stuff, and I can understand what Adrian's talking about with social media and different things that these guys have got to go through, and different appearances that they have to go. Especially if you're a superstar like Adrian Peterson, he's got a whole bunch of stuff. He's got different shoe contracts and different things like that, which is nothing. It's pretty cool to have all that stuff, but it will take a toll on you if you don't pace yourself, and you gotta make sure that you kind of pace yourself and make sure that you spend time with your family, spend time with your wife and your kids, and you don't want to get too bogged down with everything at you at once, because if you take it as a business, and that's what it really is. It is a business, but if you put in your mind that it's a business, that it's just a game that you love to play, and you have that type of mindset, that I think if you have that type of mindset, it could go very easy for you. But if you have a mindset that it's a business and you're getting bored about doing this and doing that, and you're putting into an aspect where you're not going to be happy, and it's a game. It's a game that we love. It's a game that we picked up when we were 8, 9 years old, and we love to play it, and it's a great game still to me today. I can't play it anymore, but I still love watching it. And man, it's probably the greatest sport ever to learn life from. I think football is one of those sports that you play football, you can learn a lot about life just by playing football, because you got your ups and downs, you got your bumps, you got your bruises, you got your good days, you got your bad days, man. And it's a great sport. It's a fantastic sport.
And Tony, we've touched on this before, as far as these guys today with all their personal nutritionists and all this. We back in the 80s, your off-season regimen, you mentioned working out on one zone. What would you be doing, like on a June 23rd? I know you wouldn't be on a golf course as much as you are now back then. That's for sure, right? Not in the 80s. So, but what was like a typical a month before the preseason started? What would you be doing, like working out on your own? What would a typical day be like in the life of Tony Collins?
Oh, in June right now, man, we're working out. Working in June right now, I would be in probably almost in tip-top shape. Already, I would actually start working out before minicamp. So you're talking about March, a little bit March, a little bit more in April, a whole lot in May. And May is a month where you get ready, man. May was the month for me that I really prepare myself, hit the weights hard, the hills, the stadiums, and in June. I would be in top shape in June, where you go in 8 o'clock, work out until 12, have lunch, and chill out for a little bit. And I would go back and I work out for another maybe an hour and a half on cardio, and just getting my wind up. And that would be 5 days a week in the month of June. So you're in top shape in June. So when training camp comes, you can tell you could definitely. I mean, back then you can tell the guys who were not working out during the off season when training camp came, because there are a lot of guys calling Earl and a whole bunch of other stuff. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Yeah, you could tell those guys who didn't work out during the off season. But I try to stay in the best of shape as you can. You take January, February, a little bit of March off, and then at the middle of March, man, you're hitting it. In June, it's full speed in June, because you don't want to come in July and try to get in shape, because you try to get in shape in July, man, you're going to be battling, and you're going to lose a lot of time and a lot of timing, and probably you're going to probably lose your job too if you try to get in shape in July.
Tony, before we let you go, remind our listeners again how they can follow you online and over social media and all the great things you're doing.
TonyCollinsProjects.com and TonyCollinsFoundation.com. We got a tournament coming up on Monday. We're really looking forward to that up in the Boston area, Bellingham, Mass, New England Country Club. We got a lot of good guys coming in, a lot of expatriates coming in to play. So we're going to raise money for these kids going off to school, man. It's going to be our first tournament up in that area. Really looking forward to it, and man, I'm really excited about what we're doing for these kids going off to college.
That's great stuff. Tony, thank you so much for being here again this week. We always look forward to catching up with you each and every week here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Again, we look forward to it next week, and in between now and then, good luck at the tournament, and all the best to you and your family, my friend.
Thanks, guys. You guys have a great one. God bless you.
All right, take care, Tony. That is former New England Patriots running back Tony Collins, who joins us every single week here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Great stuff from Tony, Bob. It's always interesting to me, all the teams that had remorse for letting Dan Marino get away.
That's always, pardon the pun, but it's all Monday morning quarterbacking, right, Chris? We could look back 2020 now and say, my goodness, Tony Eason, come on. But if you remember in college, many of us might have said Tony Eason is the more popular guy, so let's go. It's just, hey, it's just the way the draft goes, Chris. We know some of these quarterbacks were not drafted in the first round, have been Hall of Famers. So all we can do is just hope. And it worked out for the Patriots there, but it did work out for some other people.
Right. All right, we're going to get to our next guest, Ainsley Battles, and we're going to do so on the other side of this station identification.
Hi, this is former Rams QB Jim Everett, and you're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate, a.k.a. TNT, and it's explosive in here with my buddies, the hosts, Chris-Mascaro and Bob-Lazzari, and we're listening to all this on the Armed Forces Radio Network. So take it away, Ben.
Now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Ainsley Battles. Let me remind you about Ainsley's background. Played his college ball at Vanderbilt. He was an undrafted free agent signed by my Pittsburgh Steelers back in 2000. He played for the Steelers in 2000 and 2004. In between those years, he played a couple of seasons with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Ainsley has been a friend of the show since very early on. And to give you a frame of reference, Ainsley joined us back on episode 29. Tonight, we're on episode 246. So Ainsley's been with us for a very long time. It's been a very long time since he's been back on the show, far too long, as a matter of fact. But we are excited that he is here tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Ainsley, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
So, Ainsley, I was sort of looking back over, all of your game stats, really starting going back to Vandy, and you were there from 1996 to 1999, some lean years based on the number of wins that you guys had, but it wasn't like you guys were getting blown out every week. Boy, back, you even look at 1996, the record shows 2-11, but you lost 6 games by less than 2 touchdowns, 3 of them by a touchdown or less, including the first 2 games of the season. You lost to Notre Dame and Alabama, and later to number 1 ranked Florida, all very close games. Talk about what it was like battling the top teams in the country almost every single week and really giving them all that they could handle.
Well, geez, 1996, that's like 20 years ago. That's 17, 18 coming out of high school, and it's overwhelming. It's those moments where you're standing beside yourself. So to ask me what it was like, it's like going to the moon. It would be like being on a rocket ship. It was crazy. But the one thing you did learn through all of it is they're just another player. And you have to play them. You don't play the record. And if you prepare, and it's like Tony was saying, if you prepare, the outcomes take care of itself. So don't worry about running a 4-2. Worry about being the best cover 2 corner you can be.
Mm-hmm. And Ainsley, you played for Rod Dowhauer there, and looking back, was there something specific, that maybe the coaching staff or the team could have done, maybe differently or better to get you guys over the hump and win more of those close games?
Again, my perspective is very limited from an athlete's point of view. I think at the end of the day, the team has to win, and I think we had opportunities to, but you've got to have a mesh between the coaches and the players. And I think in today's game, you can see this, like the different type of player you're getting, in the way that they have to be treated, by their coach. And so, I know Dowhauer was with us for a year, and then after we got Woodenhofer, and you can definitely see an improvement in our play when we got Woody. And Woody was a real big players coach. So I think the school did what it needed to help inspire the guys that they have.
And then, Ainsley, you went on, you were an undrafted free agent coming out of Vandy, and you signed up there in Pittsburgh with my Steelers. So I'm curious, what led you, why Pittsburgh?
Better opportunity. The Steelers ran a 3-4, and there's only a handful of teams that run a 3-4 defense. And so, you want to stay in the league. You don't want to get to the league. You want to stay. And if you can go through Pittsburgh and the steel curtain defense and the legacy and just, well, you know what Pittsburgh is. No matter where you go, there's something about credibility. And the Steelers definitely give their players credibility. If you get a guy who used to play for the Steelers, there's certain things you can expect from them.
Really? Like what?
Like the Steelers, really?
I know what it is, I believe you, but I want you to tell the story.
The 2000 year was the last year for Three Rivers Stadium in Pittsburgh. And, Chris, what was the best game? This is perfect. Chris, give me your top 3 Three Rivers Stadium games that happened in Three Rivers. Top 3.
I don't know, man. There's so many games that were great at Three Rivers Stadium. I mean, when you look at some of the playoff games against the Oilers, we talked to Dan Pastorini about those things. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, the last one had to be something that was awfully special to be a part of.
Oh, it was definitely the last game ever played at Three Rivers, playing in front of everybody, and that being your first start in the NFL. It's those things that help you get through your tough days. Now that football's over and you're in the grind, it's those things that just tell you that your hard work pays off, and to be a part of it was incredible.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's so many great games that were in the history of Three River Stadium. I mean, it starts with the Immaculate Reception. You can't get, beyond that. And like I said, you look at some of the great playoff games that they had, and then I got to imagine it had to be a hell of a thrill to be able to say you played in the last game that was ever played in Three River Stadium. Did you take anything away from that game, Ainsley? Put anything in your back pocket on your way out the door?
Oh, man, you're just a brick in the wall, buddy. You're a brick in the wall.
Right. Bob, questions for Ainsley?
Well, Ainsley, you got me feeling a little old tonight because I'm looking at some of your stats, your bio and everything, and you were born the year I graduated high school, man. Man, now I'm feeling every joint ache that you can imagine. Hey, you can't change it, right? But, you played, Ainsley, under two, I would say, legendary coaches in the NFL, Cowher and Coughlin. Maybe for our listeners, compare and contrast these guys. Both seem very intense, but tell us about some maybe differences that these guys had.
And it's really interesting because they both won the Super Bowl twice, correct?
Yeah, Coughlin.
Cowher only got one. Cowher got one. But Coughlin got two.
Okay. Okay. Well, the biggest difference between Cowher and Coughlin knew to the minute when things would happen. It was on a schedule. You knew. And with Cowher, he was more of a player's coach because he used to play in the league. So you had two different personality types, but their personality types matched the teams. And so they were able to work together and obviously, be incredibly successful. So it just shows me that, there's more than one way to get something done. There's not like an answer. There's what works for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been out of the league for just over 10 years, Ainsley, a little more. But even back in 2004, there were receivers out there, your Calvin Johnson types. These guys now, and they're 6'4", 6'5", 230, can run like deer. And being an undersized guy like yourself, what strategies would you have to put in gear to guard guys that maybe are 5-6 inches? I know you got to use your speed and footwork, but my goodness, going up against a guy like a Calvin Johnson, you had to have a lot of talent to be able to handle this guy.
Yeah, and that gets back into being a brick in the wall. It's a team game, and so hopefully the defensive line knows that he's out. He's got 6 inches on him, so that means up front, you can't give the quarterback that much time to get the ball down the field. And so, if everybody works together, then we can definitely turn our things that might be a hindrance into something positive.
And Ainsley, you were with the Steelers, and you go back to the late '90s, early 2000s. Boy, you look over, and that was sort of the peak of Jerome Bettis' career. Curious, did you ever have to tackle Jerome one-on-one, whether it was in training camp or during practice?
In 2001, I played for the Jaguars. Our very first game was against the Steelers, who I played in 2000. And there was the block down. Tackle block down. It was a kick out, and 36 came running through the hole. And it's just those moments in time where you have to make a decision. And you can either go into the burning building or you can run away from it.
Good analogy.
So you bite your mouthpiece and just give it your best.
And speaking of that 2001 season, Ainsley, your first NFL interception came that year in a game against the Cleveland Browns, and Tim Couch was the quarterback at the time for the Browns, a guy you saw when you were at Vandy and he was playing at the University of Kentucky. Curious, did you have a familiarity with being able to read Tim Couch from from having played against him in college that may have given you a little insight on breaking on the play, or did it just happen to be that the play came your way and the ball ended up where you were able to make a catch?
I give all the credit to the coaches for putting me in a good position to make the play. Our coaches did a great job of every week just game planning. And I think Couch, he was top 2 or number 1 overall.
Yeah, good question. I can't remember if he was number 1 overall, but certainly was in the top 2.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, again, you had a young quarterback, too. So an NFL defense against a rookie quarterback, you should do well, against them.
So, Ainsley, go back to that time, that 2000 to 2004, those years, the Steelers and Jaguars were pretty heated rivals in the old AFC Central. And, when you signed, after the 2000 season and you signed in Jacksonville, the Jaguars were pretty much known for having signed, going out and signing former Steeler players, particularly in the week or two prior to playing the Steelers, and trying to pump them for information and that sort of thing. Were they doing the same with you?
Well, of course. And it's funny. I didn't really look at it like that. I was just happy my phone rang, and I had a chance to play again. So it really, the fact that it was them, you can't say there's a lot of love loss. Given, what it takes to just, I think Tony was referring to it, just train to put everything on the line for somebody else to make a decision. And the decision to them feels different than the person taking it, And so being young and, like you said, not being drafted, what are the odds of not undrafted guys making teams? I can't imagine that's real high,
Right. Bob, more for Ainsley?
We mentioned that 2001 season, Ainsley, and you scored your only NFL touchdown. I believe it was a fumble return. You have to set the scenario for us. Do you still have the ball? Tell us about that. It must have been something special for you.
Yes, I definitely do still have the ball. It was actually Monday Night Football when I was with the Jags, and it was Tony Brackens. It was a safety blitz. Tony Brackens beat his man, stripped Brett Favre. The ball was sitting there literally like a potato, just sitting there. Picked it up and just ran to, just ran to the sideline, scored. It was what it was, but it was, it was definitely a highlight. It's definitely something that a lot of guys who play defense, they can't say that they've scored.
True, and you probably didn't have a touchdown dance choreographed or anything, right?
You didn't want to trip. You didn't want to trip, and you didn't want to be the guy who spikes it on the one.
That's right. Yeah. That's great stuff. But here you are, Ainsley. I mean, you're still in your late 20s, and you're done with football. Do you think at that time, having played high school, college, and in the NFL, and all of a sudden it's over? I mean, how did you handle that mentally? Were you prepared for what life had in the future for you? And looking back, do you think you were as prepared as you could be?
No, you definitely never as prepared as you can be. And I kind of, like, now that I'm in my late 30s with 2 daughters, it's like my perspective of it changes,
Yeah.
It's kind of like going to college or going to high school or your first day at practice. It's just something you just got to learn to deal with. And everybody does it differently, but it still has to get done. And you realize that you're kind of making it up every day. So, definitely playing football, just the things the discipline that football teaches you, it makes that it gives you the skills without you really knowing you have them. And if you can connect those dots between, like, what you did to be good at football, do it towards any avenue of your life, you'll get better faster than most people around you, and you'll see results.
So, Ainsley, you've seen the struggles that the Steelers have had in the secondary over the last several years, 30th in the league last season against the pass, unfortunately. When you look at, watching the Steelers play or, checking out the scores and the highlights and all of that sort of thing, what do you think needs to change in order for them to take a big step forward this coming season?
I'll tell you the truth. I coach, I teach, I'm a dad. I can't give you an educated answer to it. Knee-jerk reaction is always you just get better players. But you know that there's a lot more that goes into it. I mean, look at the Jaguars. This year they're going to have basically 3 number one draft picks on the field. So they should do really well, but how many teams do you know of that just don't draft well? So are the Steelers, they can't be immune to bad decisions,
Right. So to the thought of getting better players, any thoughts of dusting off the 28 and heading to Latrobe in a few weeks?
Oh, not at all. I give you a strong punt coverage. I don't have much left, buddy. I'm doing what I can with these daughters.
So, Ainsley, before we let you go, let our listeners know, how can they follow you, whether it's online or over social media?
Online, I'm at Ainsley Battles on Facebook. So just look me up, befriend me, and we'll take it from there.
There you go. Ainsley, thank you so much for coming back on this show. It's been great catching up with you. We hope you'll come back much sooner next time because we've missed talking with you. It's far too long since you've been on the show with us.
It's anytime. It's just been crazy to go from episode, you said 29 to 200 and which one, 41? Is that where you're at?
246, yeah, from 29 to 246.
Yeah, it's incredible. Chris, you got to get the box set.
Yeah, we'll work on trying to put that together. We'll put it out on ThursdayNightTailgate.com. Put up a store so people can get the box set.
It's fantastic. But thanks again. I really appreciate it. And yeah, don't make it so long next time.
Absolutely not. Thank you so much, Ainsley. All the best to you and your family, your daughters. We look forward to catching up with you again real soon, my friend.
All right, thank you.
Take care, sir.
You too.
That is former Steelers and Jaguars defensive back Ainsley Battles. And I tell you, Bob, people don't, when you look at the Steelers and the history of the Steelers and the division rivals, and nowadays, obviously, we think about the Ravens. The Bengals are becoming a more heated rivalry over the course of history. The Cleveland Browns were the big rival. But, back in the, late 90s, early 2000s, that Jaguars rivalry was pretty strong. And, you think about a guy who played on both sides of that. Very interesting that Ainsley got a taste of what it was like to be on the good guy side in Pittsburgh and on the bad guy side in Jacksonville.
Absolutely. And, again, it just impressed me having played for guys like Cowher and Coughlin,
right.
Two of the legends in the game, and their contrasting styles is fascinating. But, again, for his size, great player. And, hey, to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers at that size, Chris, you had to be a good player. And, my goodness, like you said, it's been a long time. What I could explain that, if he questions about how long it has, well, we just never forgot him, right? He'll never be forgotten.
That's absolutely right. No, absolutely not. All right, coming up here in hour number 2 on Thursday Night Tailgate, sponsored by Kyvan Foods, Coastal Orthopedics, the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, and the French Lick Resort. We're going to have former Bucs wide receiver Reidel Anthony, former Steelers guard John Malecki, and author Jeff Pearlman with us, and we're going to get to Reidel Anthony on the other side of this station identification.
This is Reggie Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengals and Atlanta Falcons tight end, and you're listening to TNT, Thursday Night Tailgate. Brace yourself for the explosion.
And now joining us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Reidel Anthony, and let me remind you about his background. He's from Pahokee, and I hope I pronounced that right, Pahokee, Florida. Played his college ball at the University of Florida, where he was a consensus All-American back in 1996. He played an instrumental role in the Gators national championship team that year, leading the SEC with 72 catches for just under 1,300 yards and setting a regular season record with 18 touchdowns. In 2009, he was inducted into the University of Florida's Athletic Hall of Fame. He was a first-round draft pick, the 16th selection overall by the Tampa Bay Bucs in 1997, and he played in the NFL from 97 to 2001, all in Tampa Bay. In his rookie year, he became the youngest NFL player ever to catch a touchdown pass at the age of 20 years and 315 days old. In 1998, he finished 8th in the league in total all-purpose yards, and over the course of his career, he had 144 receptions for just under 1,900 yards and 16 touchdowns. And we are very excited that he is with us tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Reidel, chris-mascaro, and bob-lazzari here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. But I must correct you. I'm not from Pahokee. I must tell you that, because if I don't, they may find you and kill you in the city of Belle Glade, Florida. I was born in Pahokee, which was the only safe hospital back in the days, and I grew up in Belle Glade in South Bay, Florida, with South Bay, where my dad was the mayor for 24 years. So we can move on now before they find you and kill you.
I appreciate you saving me like that, Reidel.
Yeah, because, hey, the people in Belle Glade hear this show, and they were like, what? Reidel, you say you was born in Pahokee? Dude, no, those are fighting and killing words nowadays.
All right, well, I appreciate you saving us from that. So, Reidel, I wanted to start our time by, talking about your decision to play, college football at the University of Florida. I got to imagine that, schools like the University of Miami and Florida State were in hard pursuit of you. How did you end up choosing Florida over everybody else?
Well, actually, it was a difficult decision, but, I made the decision to go to the University of Florida based on a couple of things. University of Miami, that was only an hour away from home, too close to the family, mom and dad. And Tallahassee, which, the state capital, where, like I stated a minute ago, my dad was pretty much a big-time politician, and when I went on to the Florida State football camp, going to my senior year, I actually stayed with the mayor of Tallahassee. So I'm like, well, you go to Miami, you're an hour away. You go to Tallahassee, the mayor knows you. No one knows me in Gainesville. So, hey, I can go to Gainesville and be unknown and have a great time. And plus, Coach Bird, I saw him a few months ago, and we played a little golf together, and he just, honestly, he's one of the main reasons I went there, because he was a stand-up guy and, made you just feel like, just a normal human being who wants to go out and play football, score a lot of touchdowns, and have a lot of fun.
And as I looked over your college career, particularly in the early part, 95, 96, you had some really huge highs and some huge lows, when you look at how the seasons turned out. At the end of the 95 season, you guys were ranked number 2 in the country and headed into the Fiesta Bowl that year and playing against number 1 ranked Nebraska, a game that you guys led early on, 10-6 at the end of the first quarter, and kind of from there it was sort of all Nebraska. Curious, they went on a 29-0 run, if you will, in the second quarter. Did you guys, when you went into halftime, 35-10 down, were your heads spinning going into the locker room, or did you guys settle down and still think you had an opportunity to come back in the second half and potentially get back in that ballgame?
One thing about Coach Berg, you always think you had a chance to win, because in that season, we were at home against Tennessee, and we were down 35-14, I think. And we came back and won 62-24. So we never, ever thought we were ever out of a game. And his mindset was like, hey, they had a good half, and we're going to make some adjustments. We just go out and execute. And he would tell, Coach Pruitt, who was the defense coordinator at the time, give me, 3 stops, and we'll win by 14 points. So we never, ever thought we were ever out of a game, just because of how confident he was in himself, and it just spilled over to the team.
And Reidel, as tough as that game, turned out to be, it had to be, satisfying the following season when you guys sort of got the ultimate revenge on Florida State, a team that earlier, a few weeks prior, you lost by a field goal in late November. You come back, you get a second shot at them in the Sugar Bowl, and this time it's you guys that turn things around and get a resounding win, 52-20, including a nice 52-yard pass from you to Jack Jackson. How sweet was that game for you guys?
It was bittersweet. We felt like we should have beat them in the regular season, but we had a couple of bad plays here and there. But they had a great defense at that time, and I think off of that defense, they had like 6 guys go Division I. Not Division I. I mean first round. So
yeah.
They had some guys that were coming off the edge, and in the secondary, linebacker. Every level of the defense was exceptional. So it was a hard-fought game, but to get a second chance to play them, gave us an opportunity to make up for our mistakes and to show our dominance. Because that year, we played some great football. And what people don't realize that, our defense was pretty good under who's still the head coach at University of Oklahoma, Bob Stoops, and he brought in that attack defense, which our defensive backs got great looks every day, and he made sure those guys were ready, and it made us better offensively also.
And when the clock reached 0-0 in that game, and now you're a national champion, what was the first thing you did?
I really don't remember. It was like, me and Ike and Jaquez and Fred and they were standing there together. We just looked at each other like, hey, we won. But we never got too excited until we probably got back to Gainesville and realized, hey, we're national champions. Everybody was like, hey, we won another game. Woo. So that's the mindset of Coach Spurrier. Like, hey, you win. Hey, congratulations. Let's move on. And now that the season was over, it was like, congratulations. Hey, we won it all. And he just was like, all right, hey, we won it all. You come pick me up, tote me to the middle. And that's how we went about business. You know, we never got too high, we never got too low. And never get too low, meaning, we didn't lose a lot of games, so it's kind of hard to really put that in perspective. But he was so even keel that made it easy for us to just go out and compete.
Bob, questions for Reidel?
Yeah, Reidel, we're going to continue to give props to Belle Glade because I was looking at your high school, Glade Central, and could not get over that they've sent 20 players to the league, Reidel. If a high school has one or two players that make it, you would have posters all over the school. You've had 20 from your high school, and we're talking guys like Lewis Oliver, the great Fred Taylor, yourself, San Antonio Holmes. I can go on. Is the alumni network really strong, Reidel? Do you guys stay in contact? Is it still big-time football down there?
Yeah, alumni is pretty strong. You know, it's everyone has moved on to bigger and better things, and we follow each other. Just 2 weeks ago, I actually saw San Antonio at a golf tournament. So, you know, we're starting to broaden our horizon as a community and former players as far as, you know, doing different things and trying to bring it back to where we're from, like golf. You know, a lot of people think golf is boring, but, you know, I know you guys probably play. It's the most challenging sport you ever play in your life because one day you'll play well, the next day you act like you have never seen a club in your life.
Indeed.
But, you know, yeah, we know how that is. But it's challenging. And the thing, our football hasn't been as good as it used to be because they are starting to close down a lot of job opportunities back in our community. And that starts with what we're known for, sugar cane. So a lot of sugar mills are closing. And I tell you this, a lot of kids that you see at William T. Dwyer, Royal Palm Beach Central, John I. Leonard, and Wellington, those schools off the top of my head, if you go back and track kids that are successful, their heritage comes from the Belle Glade, Pahokee area because of, the job and the poverty that is going on in our community there.
And to your pro career, Reidel, you're one of those few athletes who got to play their entire careers with one coach, and it happened to be the great Tony Dungy. And every guy we've had on this show, whether they played for him or not, has had the utmost respect for the guy. Now, you're on the offensive side, and he was a defensive-minded coach, but what made him such a great head coach?
Coach Dungy just led by example, and he always was a positive person. Even though he was just on the defense side of the ball, honestly, he was a total opposite of Coach Spurrier, where Coach Spurrier would be just like, hey, I'm coaching offense, you do the defense, Coach Pruitt, Coach Stoops. But now if they gave up, 25, 28 points, and we still score 60, he'd be like, hey, I'll be back. I got to go over here and talk to these defensive guys because they're not giving me enough possessions. We're like, Coach, you scored 60 points. No, still not enough. So, it was total opposite. So to go from an offensive-minded coach who, believed in his philosophy and executed to the utmost, to go to a defense coach that obviously it worked and it continues to work because they named, defensive scheme after him. It was very interesting to see both sides of the ball, and I learned a lot. I still use a lot of their philosophies in my life on and off the field.
We are talking to Reidel Anthony here on Thursday Night Tailgate. And Reidel, just a couple of more before we let you go. As I was looking, over, that draft in '97, I'm curious to get your thoughts. You were obviously picked by the Bucs, 16th overall, but one pick earlier it was the Miami Dolphins, and they ended up picking Teal Green. Curious, were you hoping to go back home and play for the Dolphins and get that opportunity, or were you happy to go somewhere else?
That's a great question because I was pretty torn because my dad had season tickets to the Dolphins back in the late 80s, and we used to go down to the Orange Bowl. But I tell you this, I don't think I was a Dolphins fan until maybe 88, 89, because I realized they could never beat these two teams with the worst uniforms in the NFL. And you know what I'm talking about, right? In their division.
So who's that?
Buffalo Bills with those ugly uniforms and the New England Patriots with those ugly uniforms with the little dude on the helmet. Like, I hated those two teams because their uniforms. Think about it. Back in the late 80s, those uniforms probably was the worst things going. And I used to have to go down there with my dad at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and watch the Dolphins losing them every year. It was something about those two teams they just couldn't beat. But I enjoyed seeing Duper and Marino and Clay do what they do. And Marino was towards the end of his career. When I got drafted and I went on a visit, I met him. And honestly, I would love to have played a year or two with him. It would have been a dream come true. And I probably would have helped them beat those two teams. So, as you can hear, I have a lot of hate for the Patriots and the Bills in those ugly uniforms. I promise. It made for some bad Sundays. Like, I would go to church with my grandma, and they were like, the Dolphins playing Buffalo. Oh, man. I ain't even rush home to watch it. So, I had a lot of hate for those teams in those ugly uniforms.
We've got our next guest, John Malecki, hanging on the line. We're going to get to John in just a minute. One more before we let you go. So, Reidel, I guess with a degree of satisfaction, right? Your first touchdown came in Game 4 of your rookie season on a 38-yard touchdown pass from Trent Dilfer in a 31-21 win over the Dolphins. So, what was that like for you, getting to have that sort of experience against a team that I guess you grew up liking? Maybe at that point not so much, but curious to get your thoughts on that game and that catch.
Yeah, I grew up liking them. Then I went to the 49ers because they threw the ball, and they had Jerry Rice and John Taylor. And, they were pretty good, really good. So I patterned a little of my game after them, but also I did have my uncle who was drafted 30th overall to the Detroit Lions in '88. He was a receiver out of the University of Virginia. And, he had his chance. The Dolphins and the 49ers and the Seahawks, a couple of more other teams. But where I'm from, there are a lot of Dolphin fans. And to catch a touchdown against the Dolphins, and I can imagine the look on their face, especially one of them is one of my cousins who is my dad's age. And when I say he has a Dolphins den, and I can imagine the look on his face. So that touchdown celebration was towards him, and we still talk about it. So believe me, it was a great moment, and believe me, I think about it sometimes, or every time I go home, I see him, I just point at him. I don't have to say anything.
That's great. Reidel, before we let you go, let our listeners, let them know, how can they follow you, whether it's online or over social media?
Reidel Anthony 15, spelled out like that. on Instagram, and the same thing on Twitter, Reidel Anthony 15. And I have a business called At Performance Compound. And that's all I'm doing, just training kids, trying to give them opportunity to get their dreams fulfilled and get them in the right direction.
That's great stuff. Reidel, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to be a part of the show. We hope you'll come back and join us again sometime. We'd really love to, hear more of your stories, get more of your insights on what's going on, whether it's at the University of Florida or in the NFL. We'd love to catch up with you again sometime.
I will do. You have my information, my number and stuff. Just give me a call, and hey, it's always good to talk good football with great people.
I appreciate you.
That.
Thank you, Reidel. We'll catch up with you soon. In the meantime, all the best to you and your family, my friend.
Take
all
care.
Right, same to you guys.
Thank you, Reidel. That is Reidel Anthony, former University of Florida star wide receiver and played for the Tampa Bay Bucs for 5 seasons. And Bob, you want to talk about a run at the University of Florida? Those mid to late '90s Florida Gators teams were absolutely unbelievably good.
Oh yeah, and like you said, every score, 50 points was nothing. It was just you'd wait for the final just to see how bad they'd beat up on people. But Anthony had a good, impressive career in the pros too. Chris, 16 TDs, and went under the radar for his kick return talents, which we'll talk to him about next time. 98, he was well over 1,000 yards in returns, and the lost art of kick returning, he was a very good one. So, but a great guy. We'll talk to him again.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to get to our next guest, John Malecki, on the other side of these words from our friends over at the French Lick Resort.
Now's the time to plan that golf getaway you've been dreaming about at French Lick Resort. We have new Golf Academy packages for 2016, guaranteed to take your game to the next level. Try our one-day Quick Fix Academy for golf emergencies. For more in-depth learning, try the Game Changer, designed to make you a better player. Our staff professionals are ready to work with you at French Lick Resort. Did you know there's only one place in the country that you can play courses designed by 2 members of the World Golf Hall of Fame on the same property? The Pete Dye and Donald Ross courses at French Lick Resort make us an ultimate golf destination for 2016. Check out the Ultimate Golf Package, the Hall of Fame Package, and other great offerings at FrenchLick.com. Let 2016 be that year you finally take your dream golf getaway at French Lick Resort. Play the courses champions play.
Hello, everybody. Van Earl right here, reminding you that you're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate with the dynamic duo of Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari, right here on the Armed Forces Radio Network.
And now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is John Malecki. Let me remind you about John's background. He's from Murraysville, Pennsylvania, which is about 25 minutes from my hometown of Penn Hills, both just outside of Pittsburgh. He was a member of the Franklin Regional High School State Championship team in 2005, playing both offensive and defensive lines. He stayed home and played his college ball at the University of Pittsburgh, where he was named to the Big East All-Academic team. After the 2008 season, he was named the most improved offensive player for the Panthers, and as a senior, he was named first-team All-Big East. He was an undrafted free agent signed by the Tennessee Titans in 2010, and he spent some time playing for the Browns, Bucs, Redskins, and Steelers before signing a futures contract with the Steelers in August of 2012 and was promoted to the active roster in October of that season. In 2013, he spent some time on the Steelers active roster backing up David DeCastro. Now John makes the best custom furniture that you're going to find anywhere on the planet, folks. You need to go check it out, like I said at the very top of the show. If you haven't seen it, absolutely fantastic. Go to johnmalecki.com to see for yourself how great it really is, and we're very excited he is back with us again on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, John, Chris, and Bob here. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, John.
Always a pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
So, John, I was very excited. I was watching, the video that Titleist put together called Whereabouts Steel City, Pennsylvania, in conjunction with the U.S. Open, being there at Oakmont. And I'm watching the video and, showing all the sights and sounds from around Pittsburgh. And then suddenly, boom, there you are. So, and for those, folks listening to the show, please, go check out the video. You can find it on my Facebook page and on the show's Facebook page as well. But John, how did all that come about?
I was honestly pure luck. I happened to be a sign up for team Titleist email list, and it usually goes to a promotions or spam type folder for me. And I was just working on my computer one afternoon. They sent out an email blast to all of the people on their list in the Pittsburgh area, and they were looking to do some relative content to bring a little bit of behind the scenes of what goes on in Pittsburgh, especially since the Open was here last week. And I jumped on the opportunity. I sent them my info, sent them my website, a little bit of backstory on me, and next thing you know, I'm on the phone with their production team, and they're in my workshop, and we're talking building, we're talking Pittsburgh, we're talking golf, and it ended up being a really awesome experience. And those guys did a great job of one, making me look cool, but two, really bringing to light how awesome Pittsburgh is as a city, and how rooted sports and one being golf is with the 9-to-5ers and the guys that are out there still doing manual labor around the city. So it wasn't what most people expected, like, oh, they just called him because he used to play ball, but it was actually kind of more or less luck of the draw.
So did you get an opportunity, or have you had an opportunity to get to play out at Oakmont?
No, unfortunately, we did not. I got a couple buddies that have been teasing me for years who, got friends that are members and I've been trying to get on for a while now. My game by no means is in any shape to get on at Oakmont and do anything. I just would love to be able to walk up and down the course and get on those historic greens and
right.
check out the clubhouse and stuff. So hopefully sometime here soon I can go hack up around out there with where all the legends have been.
So, having done that video and, obviously widely played, did it, help you? Did it bring attention to your furniture business, which, again, outstanding stuff?
Oh, thank you very much. I've gotten some good attention from it and whatnot. They really just did an outstanding job of bringing to light, small business owners in the city. And it's something that they plan on doing, as the Open continues to go from city to city, and obviously putting content out there this day and age is the biggest way of starting up business. So I've gotten a lot of great feedback, and honestly, I've gotten a lot of people that just want to come down, check out the shop, see what it's about, see what I'm about, learn a thing or two about building or making, and that's more what I'm about. Like, obviously, business is vitally important, but being able to show everyday people that they can go out there and use their hands and make some beautiful stuff and inspire people it's an amazing feeling, and I've really gotten a lot of that feedback from that video, so it's been pretty cool.
Very cool. Bob, questions for John?
It's great to speak again, John, and I think we've focused on Florida high school football a lot tonight, but I got to give the props to Pennsylvania too, because I think I might have mentioned this to you before. I first became aware of Pennsylvania as being such a hotbed when I was in graduate school at the University of New Haven. And John, we would see these teams like Millersville and Kutztown and Indiana come up, and they were filled with great players. And I'm sure a lot of them were friends of yours over the years. You got a chance to go to the Pit, obviously, but there were so many great players on these Division II schools, I should say. It's a major hotbed, and I just think I just want to throw that out there. I'm sure you probably have been around a lot of guys that attended those institutions that probably just couldn't get into Pitt or Penn State.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Western Pennsylvania especially has been a hotbed for college football recruiting for a long time now. I mean, you can go all the way back to the 70s when Pitt was in the national championship picture for so long, and that decade all the way up till now, and you got unbelievable talent coming out of the area. I mean, off the top of my head, Darrelle Reeves, you just had Tyler Boyd drafted very early last year, and LaShawn McCoy's a Pennsylvania kid. You got a Division II kid out of Slippery Rock, and Brandon Fusco. I believe he's still playing for the Vikings. Kid's put an unbelievable career together. There's one, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but there's a lot of good talent in the area, and it's mostly come from the fact that you live and die football up here in the area, and it's in your blood. I mean, the love for the Steelers and the tradition and history at Pitt and Penn State and the colleges in the area as well just really breeds focus on the sport itself. So I a lot of kids play and fortunately put themselves in a situation where they can go and get some money to play at college. And as you said, not everyone can get a Division I scholarship, but there's tons of talent in the I don't even know what they're called anymore. It was the FCS schools and the smaller schools out there as well. And with the social media the way it is this day and age, anyone can get noticed, and we're seeing that across the board as more kids from smaller schools are getting shot in the league. So I love when a under the radar person comes out and jumps off the page at the combine or really blows some people away when it comes to getting a shot at training camp type thing.
Blue collar as it gets. And I know with all the football awards you received and everything, John, I'm sure, knowing the kind of guy you are, you're probably most proud of having made, as Chris mentioned, an all-academic football team in the Big East. I mean, was this something that was stressed to you way back when you were a child, that you had to get it done in the classroom as well as on the football field?
Yeah, I come from the high school I went to. Was fortunate. It was like a very well-known academic school in the area, and a lot of my friends were just like animals in the classroom. And these guys they're brilliant, and still are. I mean, working on Wall Street for Big Four accounting firms and all kinds of stuff. They're just extremely intelligent individuals, and obviously you're a competitive kid. You want to compete in all aspects and on the sports field and off. So you want to go to class with your buddies. And I mean, I had to go to AP classes because I wanted to be in class with my boys. So you really had to step it up in the classroom. And then when I got to college, I understood that the opportunity to go to the NFL was very slim and very, very small. And I knew that being afforded a full scholarship to a major university was something that is few and far between when it comes to the way the world works. So I wanted to take full advantage of that. I actually had a great opportunity to look up to an individual from the local area, Scott McKillop, who I really wanted to emulate, his route and the way he was doing things. And I got to Pitt, and he was in business school, and so I followed that route. And really, he was all academic as well, and he was a phenomenal football player on the field, as we all know. And I just wanted to go ahead and do my best to, be that type of person and live that type of life. So getting it done in the classroom was something that I knew I almost looked at it as it had to be done, because I would have been throwing an opportunity down the drain if I wasn't in there, trying to crush it academically, being afforded the opportunities I was.
And John, with training camp set to open here in just a few weeks, curious to get your memories from being in camp with the Steelers in Latrobe.
Well, I grew up just 15, 20 minutes from Latrobe, so training camp in Latrobe is an extremely unique circumstance. I mean, ironically, I flew from training camp in Tampa Bay, where they have unbelievable facilities and an immaculate lodging situation where they put their players up. I don't even remember the name of the hotel, but I walked into it and was like, wow, this is unbelievable. And then I go to Latrobe, and you're in a dorm room with a single bed, and you're out in the middle of nowhere. And it was just a different ball game. My first year up there was the lockout year, so I didn't get to practice for the first few days. After the next, I don't even know. I think I was in 3 training camps there. Yeah, the next 2, you get into a routine and stuff. You really learn to like it and appreciate it, like the solitude and being out there so far from like where you normally are, and typically would be the hustle and bustle of life. And Latrobe has an atmosphere and an aura to it that you understand what's come before you. They have posters and plaques and trophies and all kinds of stuff on the walls and in trophy cases of, the greats, the Rooneys and Jack Lamberts and Terry Bradshaw and all those guys who have come up through the ranks of the Steelers. And Latrobe has a ton of history and that entire legacy of what's going on with that franchise. So me being a fan my entire life and growing up in the city and being able to go, walk down the halls and see where the greats have come before you, it was surreal. It was amazing. And then I was able to, have my family and friends were hop, skip, and jump away and could come watch practice and meet the guys and really get to experience as much of it as they could as well. So it was a lot of fun. Coach Kugler used to tell me I was the type of psychopath that actually enjoyed camp, and he used to crack on me for it. But I really did. Coach Wansett and Coach Wise said the same thing in college. Like, I was the guy that I enjoyed being around the team. I enjoyed being the 100% all day football type guy. It's something that you can't replicate that in life, and I don't care what anyone says. Like, so what football camp at any level, high school, college, NFL, whatever, what that means to you as a young man and as an adult, you really can't get that feeling and that camaraderie and the bonding and the whole atmosphere. You can't replicate it anywhere else. Me and my high school buddies still crack on, our camp and what happened there when, the stupid little memories you have when we were kids back in our, sophomore and junior year and stuff. So it's training camps. It's a lot of fun. It sucks, but it's a lot of fun. There's good, bad to it, but if you take the good and understand that it's short-lived, especially in the spectrum of life, man, do you really get some good stuff out of it.
We are talking to former Steelers guard John Malecki here on Thursday Night Tailgate. And John, just a couple more before we let you go. As I saw posted on social media, did the Penguins call you to try to get that dent out of the Stanley Cup?
I wish. A very close friend of mine owns a paintless dent repair company, and he's a monster hockey fan. So when I saw that, I started giggling, and I shot him a text. I was like, hey, so he put a post out there, I reshared it and stuff. That would have been amazing if they did. I'm sure they're actually probably not going to repair it to see all-encompassing damage after it gets shared throughout the summer. But that was a fun little post, and I can't believe you guys saw that. That's pretty funny.
John, before we let you go, as we've talked, throughout the course of the conversation, a little bit about the fantastic, custom-made furniture business that you have now. Tell our listeners, all about it and how they can go find more information and actually see some of the works that you've done.
So as you guys know, I'm pretty big on my my Instagram. I also have, of course, Facebook and Twitter. Those are all at John_Malecki. You can check a bunch of my work out there and see what I'm up to. I also have a YouTube channel where I post videos on how I'm building stuff and, what's going on in the workshop as well. And all of it is backlinked to my website, which is johnmalecki.com. I specialize in reclaimed industrial furniture. I like to take old, beams and flooring and walls and trusses and all kinds of stuff and turn it into some timeless, beautiful furniture that you're able to do something good and has a good story behind it, and happens to be pretty aesthetically pleasing and people pretty hot item right now in the design world. So that's where I'm at and that's what I'm doing. And if you want to check me out, there's the links.
There you go. And it is fantastic stuff, folks. You're not going to be disappointed when you go check it out. John does some absolutely incredible work. And, John, we can't thank you enough for coming back and being a part of the show again tonight. We hope you'll come back during the season and share more of your insights and stories with us. We always have such a great time when you're a part of the show.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to. I'm looking forward to the season. There's a lot going on in Pittsburgh football talk, so it'd be interesting to see how things roll in this fall.
Mm-hmm. Well, we hope you'll come back and talk with us about it, John, in between now and then. We can't thank you enough for being here tonight, and we wish you much success with your business, and all the best to you and your family, my friend.
And you too as well. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Take care,
Thanks, John. That is former Steelers guard John Malecki, and Bob. I can't tell you now, and I mean it very sincerely. His work that he is doing with the custom-made furniture that he puts together, I mean, it's absolutely fantastic stuff. And it's a wide variety of different things, from tables and all, just such an array of things that John does, and all such great stuff.
I checked it out today, the website, johnmalecki.com. You got to check it out, guys. I mean, he's got the blog, Chris, which actually it's almost a how-to type thing. As you mentioned, the YouTube channel. But you're right, as far as to have that kind of talent and just looking at some of the pictures, I've always been very jealous of the artistic people as yourself, as you and I draw stick figures, right, Chris? These guys can do amazing stuff with their hands, and but yeah, check out the website. I'm flabbergasted by some of the things, his transformations, and it's beautiful stuff. And if I ever have the need to do that, I will definitely hook up with him. Man's very talented.
Yes, he is indeed. Again, johnmalecki.com. Great stuff, folks. All right, before we get to our next guest, Jeff Pearlman, I want to give a quick shout-out to our good friend Renee Shaw at Career Engagement Institute. Folks, you hear us bragging on Renee every single week here on Thursday Night Tailgate. But if you're upside down in your career, and what I mean by that is if you're ready to move on, go to careerengagement.institute to see how Renee can help you. You've heard Toy Cook talking about Renee and singing her praises. You hear us do it every single week on Thursday Night Tailgate. And if you work with Renee for 2 minutes, I promise you are going to, understand why we do that every single week here on Thursday Night Tailgate. We all want to work with someone that we can trust and who actually has our best interest at heart. And you know how rare that is to find someone like that. Well, you're not going to find anybody that fits that description any better than Renee Shaw. She is smart, creative, and very talented, the kind of person you want to work with and have working for you. Renee has been doing some great things for some of our guests who have been in transition from being pro athletes and are now getting into the job market. I'm telling you, folks, she is just the very best. There isn't a better way to describe Renee than that. If you're an athlete or anyone in the job market, do yourself a favor and reach out to Renee. You're going to be so very glad that you did. Go to careerengagement.institute online and give her a follow on Twitter @IntegratedPlay. All right, now joining us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Jeff Pearlman. Jeff is the author of several books, including The Bad Guys Won about the 1986 Mets. He's also written, several others, like I say, Sweetness about the life of Walter Payton, The Rocket That Fell to Earth about Roger Clemens, Love Me, Hate Me about Barry Bonds, Boys Will Be Boys about the 90s Cowboys, and Showtime about the LA Lakers of the 1980s. He's got a new one on the way titled Gunslinger, which is a biography about Brett Favre, which is due out in late October. You've probably also read Jeff's work on places like ESPN.com, Sports Illustrated, The Bleacher Report, CNN.com, and Newsday, and we are very excited that he is with us tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Jeff, Chris, and Bob here. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Jeff.
I just want to say this is the quirkiest group of guests I've ever seen on a single show. I love it. You have a woodworking former player. You have Reidel Anthony, right? Was he on?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you had Tony Collins. Tony Collins?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. That is truly fantastic. I saw that and I was like, oh, my God, this is so cool. So good work for you.
I appreciate you saying that. Mm-hmm. So, Jeff, before we start talking about your books, I really enjoyed reading your sort of first-person, third-person biography about yourself on your website, jeffpearlman.com. I particularly liked where you said, your highest moment was being hired by Sports Illustrated 15 years after guaranteeing your mom that one day you'd be working for Sports Illustrated. So I'm curious, would you mind sharing that story?
Yeah, well, that's actually true. So when I grew up in Mahopac, New York, which is a small town, I used to love reading sports, and I told my mom when I was, I think, in junior high. I actually vividly remember telling her, I was like, I'm gonna write for Sports Illustrated one day, and she was like, well, you have to be realistic, and it's kind of the Jewish mother thing, lawyer, doctor. And I was like, no, I'm telling you, I'm going to write for Sports Illustrated. And it's weird because I just knew it. Like I just knew it in my little prepubescent mind that this is what I was going to do. It wasn't like I believed it like I thought it could happen. I was like, I'm going to do it. So fast forward, I'm a writer at the Nashville Tennessean, and I get a call from her name was Bambi Wolf, the chief of reporters at SI, and she offers me the job. You know, the first thing I do is call my parents, and I'm just like hysterically thrilled. And I'm like, I told you. And it was one of the great, I mean, still talking about it kind of brings a natural like giddiness to me because it was just a real moment for me, you know, and that was the start of what's been like, just like for me, like the absolute dream career, like just a joy. So, hey, hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, and Jeff, the other thing from your bio that I'm curious about is why have you taken on wearing your T-shirts inside out?
Oh, it's so funny. I think in 2 of my book jacket photos now I have my T-shirts inside out. I don't actually. I'm just lazy, you know. I'm like the guy who my wife's always like, "Do you ever look in the mirror?" She says, "Do you ever look in the mirror and wipe off the toothpaste on your face or like whatever?" And she'll be like, "You have a zit." I'm like, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" And she's like, "Why don't you look in the mirror sometimes?" So I just kind of, you know, shorts go inside out, T-shirt. I didn't become a sports writer to wear tuxedos and you know, and Dockers. I'm barefoot right now. Literally, I'm barefoot in a pair of Maryland basketball shorts and a crappy Green Bay Packer T-shirt. So this is, you know, it's a choice, a conscious effort to be sloppy.
Bob, questions for Jeff?
Hey, Jeff, it's great to speak with you. I mean, I could sympathize as far as the sports writing. I did it for 15 years. I wrote a column, and you know all about there's nothing like writer's block where you have to just walk away, and then you say to yourself, why am I doing this to myself? And you know that feeling. And it's just, again, it's an honor to speak with you. But, you know, looking at some of the writings, Jeff, I mean, Walter Payton, as Chris knows, probably my favorite football player ever, one of my greatest favorite athletes ever, just because of his work ethic. You know, I had read the other book, Never Say Die, about him, and
Never Die Easy.
Never Die Easy. I'm sorry. And it just came to me that this guy was beyond special. And while you were doing your book, Jeff, what did you learn more about him? Maybe something that I don't know that made him so special. I mean, one of the greatest athletes that we'll ever see.
Man, you read the wrong Peyton book, man.
I sure did. I'll get you.
It's so funny. Well, it's actually funny because that book, I remember when I read, this isn't quite the answer to your question, but I remember when I read that book. So that was Peyton's, he wrote it with Don Yeager. It was Peyton's autobiography. It came out after he died. And Never Die Easy was a quote from his college coach, Bob Hill, about running the football. Never die easy, you know, always die hard, you know. And I remember reading that book and thinking like, I don't know if writing about Peyton, I don't know if this is going to work because the guy, it just seems like it's all covered. And, you know, how do you write a book when such a thorough book as Never Die Easy came out? And then I started researching Peyton, and it turns out, I hate to say this, but Never Die Easy, there was a good dose of fiction in that book. It was, you know, he was a really complicated guy, like a really complicated guy. He was very self-aware. He had real great moments with people and real awful moments. He was a horrible husband, as is the case with many athletes. He was definitely addicted to painkillers, which is, I'm not putting the blame on him, but certainly they were feeding him to players back in the 70s and 80s. He suffered from severe depression after he was done playing. I don't know, you know, he was never checked for CTE, but he would, you know, he made several suicide threats after he was done playing, where he would call his assistant and say, "You're not going to see me in the morning." He wrote a suicide note to his assistant saying, "You're not going to see me in the morning." He actually, it's kind of heartbreaking. Actually, I thought learning about Walter Payton, first of all, he never wanted to let people down. And in many ways, he was just fantastic. Like he knew he meant something to people, and he wanted to uphold that image. And I actually think like a lot of guys in his shoes, former football players who took a beating, who kind of feel like their best years are behind them at the age of 33 or 34, they don't really know what to do, and they don't know how to handle themselves, and they don't know where to go for help. And I actually think he spent so much time trying to be sweetness to people and trying to meet their expectations that inside after his career was over, there was a guy who was really suffering and really struggling. And it was actually, that was a major thing I learned about him, is that there was real heartbreak there at the end of his life. That was very depressing.
Wow. So
that's not the cheerful answer you wanted, man. Sorry.
No, yeah, exactly. Like you said, if you had read the first book and then came away with it where kind of just that he just was, Walter Payton was just kind of one of a kind, but it didn't really go into the post-playing. And now what we know about concussions and everything else, it does make a lot of sense.
I mean, he took a beating. He took a beating.
He sure did.
And
he put out a beating.
And he gave out a beating.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, the thing is, I'm not saying anything was wrong with that book. Like, he was writing it from his perspective. It was his autobiography. You're certainly not obliged to tell her. You pick and choose. It's your book. I'll tell you something interesting about Payton also that I really love is if you go to all the obituaries about Walter Payton, and it still has this. You go to his Wikipedia page. It says that he was 45 years old when he died, and he was actually 46. He lied about his age when he was in college because he thought it would help him win the Heisman Trophy if he seemed younger. So he actually died at 46, not 45. And it's really funny because I had proof on it. I saw the records, blah, blah, blah. It's 100% legitimate. And places still call him say he's 45 when he died. And I'm like, nah, I'm telling you, the guy was 46. It's just like a funny sort of, he was hyper competitive. And he really, when he was at Jackson State, Archie Griffin was a superstar at Ohio State. And Archie Griffin won 2 Heisman trophies. He was the only guy to ever win 2 Heisman trophies. And Payton just knew Archie Griffin was not in his caliber. Like, he just knew it. And so I think changing his age is almost like a little nod to his desire to show, to put himself on the stage and have people see how amazing he was. And
to switch to baseball just for a minute to Chris's chagrin here, Jeff, but I'm going to talk about those 86 Mets who, up here in the Northeast, we watch them so closely. And I'm looking at their roster right now, and what stands out are guys like Dykstra and Strawberry, who, of course, had incredibly decent careers, but many problems later in life. And it's just amazingly to me, you look back, especially Dykstra, how he got into, he made so much money, and actually, I think he was, what was it, Jeff? He owned car dealerships, or was it car washes?
No, car washes.
Car washes, became a very wealthy man, and then went on the wrong side of the law and then did some time. And, of course, Strawberry, given every chance by Steinbrenner and et cetera, maybe a lot of enablers out there, but they were 23 and 24 years old at the time. But was there any sign that they would lead these kind of wild lives that they did?
Yeah, actually there were. They were. Strawberry and Gooden were both heavy into cocaine. So that was a pretty good indicator. And Dykstra, even back then, was very slimy and very, like, he gambled, and he was an addictive gambler back when he was with the Mets. I mean, he would gamble on absolutely everything and anything. He gambled large quantities of money. He couldn't walk away from a bet. I would say, if you were to tell members of the Mets, if you went back to 1986 and asked a lot of those guys who are going to be the 2 people, who are going to be the people who are addicted to drugs, who could be someone who's going to be in jail. If you said who's going to be the guy who's going to be in jail, not for drug use, but for fraud or something, I think Dykstra would have won in a landslide. And if you'd said who's going to have serious addiction problems, I think Strawberry probably would have been the first pick back then. So neither is that shocking, actually. Neither is that shocking.
And to stay on that topic, Jeff, and for the folks listening, and again, the name of the book is The Bad Guys Won, and let me give you the full title. The Bad Guys Won, a season of
I
brawling.
can't even do it. I can't even do it.
You can't even do it?
I can't even do it. I cannot do it. I swear to God, I can't do it. Go ahead.
The Bad Guys Won, a season of brawling, boozing, bimbo chasing, and championship baseball with Straw, Doc, Mookie, Nails, the Kid, and the rest of the 1986 Mets, the rowdiest team who ever put on a New York uniform, and maybe the best. So, Jeff,
that's the worst. That's the worst subtitle of a book ever. It makes me cringe every time I hear it. It's my bestseller, so I can't complain that much. But man, that's a bad title.
But talk about you called it a train wreck. As you put in that that the team left in its wake on the way to winning the World Series. Was there something when you're researching that book? Was there something that really made you say they did what?
Oh yeah, I mean they were. there are a lot of things. My favorite is like, so they had back in '86. This was the period of the Super Bowl Shuffle. You know, Super Bowl Shuffle was huge, and the Mets actually had a song called "Let's Go Mets," but they were lip syncing, and it was just a video, and it was really big in New York. So George Foster was the right fielder for the Mets to open the season. He ended up not left fielder, excuse me. He ended up being cut, released eventually, but he was a left fielder, and he came up with the idea that the Mets should do their own rap. So it's a song called "Get Metsmerized." It's on YouTube. It's the greatest rap ever. It's like one of those things. It's so awful that it's actually good. You know, like it's so bad. So he basically enlisted like Rafael Santana, who spoke horrible English, Lenny Dykstra, who probably read at a third grade level, like Strawberry, who could not keep the beat for the life of him. It was like the worst. You could not pick, if you pick the 5 worst Met rappers, just like by, you know, trying, this is who you would get. And they did this album, and I mean, to give you an example, one of the lines is, if you want a batter filled with terror, call on me, Rick Aguilera. See, Aguilera and terror. I mean, it's so awful. So Foster puts the record out, because Foster was always looking for little angles and little money. And he did this thing for a while when he was with the Mets, where he got in business with a guy who made knockoff polo shirts, and he would send a clubhouse guy into the visiting team's clubhouse to sell these knockoff polo shirts. And the horse had like 5 legs instead of 4, and like they would shrink to tiny size, and the team would come back in town, and I'll be complaining about these crap ball shirts at George Foster. So Foster does this record, and he thinks he's going to make millions off of it, but the Mets won't allow it to be sold at Shea Stadium because it's just pure crap. So I think it ends up selling about maybe 1,000 copies of vinyl and disappears into the abyss. But that when I found that when I was reporting my research in the book, and someone told me about Get Metsmerized, I was like, this is the best thing ever. It's on YouTube. It's totally worth listening to. That's the best.
And Jeff, you talk about, you know, Straw with the cocaine problems, and something I didn't remember about, you know, the World Series parade is, you know, Doc Gooden was nowhere to be found when the rest of the guys, you know, were able to, you know, even after, you know, drinking all night and everything else that they were doing, were able to, you know, drag themselves to the parade. No Doc Gooden. What happened to Doc?
Same thing. Had a bender, and it was and he talked about this later on. Actually, he was strung out, I think, on coke. And, you know, it kind of goes to, I mean, talk about the power of addiction exemplified. I mean, here's your crowning achievement, right? You just won the World Series. New York is hosting a ticker tape parade for you, you know, and you can't go because you're so strung out. Gooden to me, they're both good. I mean, Strawberry's kind of really gotten his life on track this past decade. It's pretty impressive. And Gooden, you could see, just really still struggles, and he's very day-to-day. And it's just sad. He's one of the nicest guys out there, but he just never could really kick it. You know, and it starts back then. And again, if you want to show someone Exhibit A of the power of cocaine as an addictive drug, you're missing the ticker tape parade down the Cavern of Heroes after winning the World Series in New York because you're strung out on coke. I mean, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, no doubt. And we're talking with author Jeff Pearlman here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Bob, one more for Jeff before we let him go. And
Jeff, the upcoming book on Favre, you know, it's ironic, Jeff. I wrote a column in March of 2008. I have it in front of me right now. It's a letter of thanks to number 4. Now, this is when he supposedly retired with the Packers, and it just kind of, I'm sure you've done the same thing. You publish something, and then something gets caught up in the whole journalism thing that throws it for a loop, and you're like, oh man, why did he do that? But I'm looking at it, and one of my lines says, "And thanks in advance for staying retired, Brett. You may have not won another Super Bowl as was your wish, but you truly went out on top." And of course, now he would play 3 more years. But I'm sure it's happened to you. But how was the whole experience as far as putting that book together, anyway?
It was great. It was really interesting. And the funny thing is, I'll tell you something funny, is I had his brother, Brett's older brother, has an older brother named Scott Favre. And I had like breakfast with Scott in Mississippi while researching the book. And he told me that in many ways he thought the most important season of Favre's career was his last season in Minnesota. And it was a total disaster. I don't even remember this. The Vikings were terrible. He got knocked out cold at a game against the Chicago Bears at the University of Minnesota because a roof had caved in the Metrodome. It was just the whole season just sucked. Everything went bad. Favre didn't play well. He got no protection. It was just a brutal, brutal year. And Scott said to me, I was like, I don't know, did he make a mistake coming back? And his take was, actually, I'd say it's the opposite. He needed a really sort of bad ending to say, you know what, this is it. You need to get out of here. I've stayed too long. Like he almost needed to stay too long to convince him it was time to leave. Because if it was a 13-3 season, he was always going to think, you know what, maybe I can do one more year. So I actually think that even though it didn't match the poetry that we were all hoping for, back in 2008. I think he needed to go out on the bottom, not on the top, in some weird way.
Wow.
And Jeff, before we let you go, let our listeners know how can they take a look at all the books that you've written, the articles, the blogs, and follow you over social media as well.
Yeah, well, I'm on Twitter at Jeff Pearlman and website jeffpearlman.com, and you can also order my custom-made furniture at jeffpearlman.com.
Talented guy.
Right, good for you.
Yeah,
thank you so much for taking time out of your night to be a part of the show. It was great getting the opportunity to talk with you. I hope you come back and join us again sometime. Obviously, with all the books, you really didn't even get to talk about the Roger Clemens one and the Boys Will Be Boys book. So there's a lot still to get into with you. We hope you'll come back and join us again sometime.
Yeah, man. No problem. Thanks, guys. I appreciate
Jeff.
it.
Thanks,
right,
Jeff.
ciao.
Take care. All the best to you and your family. That is author Jeff Pearlman, and so many other things to get into with him, Bob. Obviously, we talked, to your point, much to our chagrin, about the '86 Mets and a team that we hold in much disdain. But you start talking about Roger Clemens, you want to talk about disdain, and Red Sox fans, it doesn't get you more disdainful than having to talk about Roger Clemens. So it'd be interesting to hear, about that book. And like I say, we didn't even get into the one about the Dallas Cowboys of the '90s or Showtime with the Lakers in the '80s. So much more to get into with Jeff. Hopefully we get to get him back on the show pretty quickly.
Absolutely, Chris. Trust me, having been in the business, he's one of the heavyweights. SI and the things he's written about and the talent that he possesses. And the whole John Rocker thing. My goodness, we'll have him on maybe a few more times to try to whittle away at his incredible career. But tremendous journalist.
Absolutely right. All right, when Bob and I come back, we'll be turning on the Thursday Night Tailgate Spotlight on the Positive, and then we'll wrap up the show, and we're going to do all of that on the other side of these words from our friends over at Coastal Orthopedics and Kyvan Foods.
Are you suffering from chronic pain in your shoulders, hips, knees, or wrists? Tired of living life with an old injury that just won't go away? If you answered yes to either of these questions, we can help. At Coastal Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Dr. Candelora and his fine staff of medical professionals will get you back on the road to recovery. Their state-of-the-art facility and attention to detail will ensure you will be enjoying life again and feeling invincible in no time. Since 1991, Dr. Candelora and Coastal Orthopedics have been specializing in joint replacement, arthritis, and osteoporosis care, as well as pediatric and adult general orthopedics. Visit us on the web, www.bone-dr.com, or call our Newport Richey office just north of Tampa at 727-848-1417. Proud sponsors of Mike Ditka's The Gridiron Greats Assistance Fund.
This is Reggie Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengals and Atlanta Falcon tight end, and I'm the owner of Kyvan Foods. And if you enjoy delicious food, you're going to love my Kyvan products, which consist of our honey apple salsa, sweet barbecue sauce, and an array of seasonings. For store locations, online orders, and recipes, check out our website at www.kyvan82.com. That's KYVAN 82.com. One taste, and you'll appreciate the goodness.
Hey, welcome back. This is Todd Washington, two-time Super Bowl champ, offensive line coach for the Baltimore Ravens, and you are listening to Thursday Night Tailgate with my boys Chris-Mascaro and Bob-Lazzari on the Armed Forces Radio Network. Go get them, guys.
Hey, we're back on Thursday Night Tailgate, and we're turning on our spotlight on the positive. Bob, who do you have for us this week?
Chris, we hear so much about the greatness of J.J. Watt on the field. Already, and you talk about another probable Hall of Famer, probably the best defensive player we've seen in a long time. Well, he does things off the field that are so incredible. Here is a guy, when he was even in college, Chris, knew that he had to come up with some kind of starting a foundation because of some bad things that were happening in schools in his area. And that has dedicated himself since to basically teaching things like basically accountability and teamwork to kids at a very, very young age. And he's gone well over $1 million just to schools to try to make this happen. But just in spite of all that, his goal, his motto is dream big, work hard. But we always see this guy. Another guy you see visiting hospitals, Chris, he just wants to make people happy. Big military guy. I can go on and on. Again, a finalist for the Man of the Year award. But my goodness, how good can you combine his on-the-field perfection to what he does off the field? He's one of the good guys.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff, Bob. And, Bob, tonight I want to put the spotlight on the positive on Bengals defensive end Carlos Dunlap. His foundation sponsors 3 really great programs. Dunlap Scholars, which works with underprivileged high school students to help them improve their ACT and college readiness, give them college readiness tools so that they can be better prepared when it's time for them to go to college. They also have a program called Faces Without Places, which throws birthday parties for homeless children who've never had a birthday party. What a great idea. And the third program is called MVK, so it's for Most Valuable Kids, which partners with Boys Hope, Girls Hope to take underprivileged children to sporting events and entertainment events. Plus, he holds a football camp for kids that are age 16 to 14, and even further kudos, Bob, and I know you'll love this one, because he entered, the draft back in 2010, but so as an underclassman, so he skipped his senior season, but he made his mother a promise that he would go back to school and complete his college degree. So while his teammates were home relaxing over the last several off seasons, Carlos was back on campus at the University of Florida, taking classes to complete his degree in family and community services, of all things. So what a great tie-in here. And he completed his undergrad degree this spring. So in this year's graduation ceremony just happened to be on Friday, April 29th, which was the same day as rounds 2 and 3 of the NFL draft. And Dunlap was scheduled to announce the Bengals' third-round draft pick. So instead of walking across the stage to receive his college diploma with his peers there at school, he wore his cap and gown when he strode across to the microphone to announce the Bengals' third-round selection. So he did that. Plus, he's got plans to continue his education and get his master's degree now. And as his mother stated regarding the importance of earning his degree and going back to school, she says, it's all going to pay off in the long run. The NFL is not for long, so you need to have a backup plan, which is obviously great advice. So kudos to her and to Carlos Dunlap for being great examples, for giving back to their communities and then going back to school and earning the degree and keeping the promise to your mother. So, like I say, kudos to Carlos Dunlap. Some great stuff there, Bob.
Well, think about it, Chris. How many guys they make the big bucks and there's no need to go back to school, literally, but there's kids watching, Chris, and when kids see a guy like Dunlap who's not making the huge money a lot of these other guys do, that they see something like this, it has to have an impact. Somewhere, right. Somehow, it has an impact, and what he's doing is tremendous, and that's why we love doing this at the end of each show. It's like we took another shower, right? We feel so good afterward.
That's right. So some great stuff. Kudos to J.J. Watt and Carlos Dunlap for for the great things that they are doing in their communities and as individuals as well. So, folks, tune in here every single week. Like Bob just said, every single week here on Thursday Night Tailgate, we're going to let you know about a couple of players that are doing some great things within their respective communities. It's right here on the Thursday Night Tailgate Spotlight on the Positive. All right, Bob, it is time for us to put a bow on this episode. We want to thank again Dan Reeves, Tony Collins, Ainsley Battles, Reidel Anthony, John Malecki, and Jeff Pearlman for being a part of tonight's show. And Bob, like I say every single week here, can't thank you enough for getting to spend my Thursday nights with you, my friend. Always such a great time doing this show and having you as my partner.
Same to you, Chris. And that was, as Jeff said, a very eclectic lineup tonight. And you learned so much. And Mr. Pearlman was a part of it. And it was a great show. And these guys, again, what we love about these guests is they come back and they become friends. And that's what makes this show worth all the hard work.
There you go. So next week, who do we have scheduled to join us here on TNT? Well, our good friend Dr. Stephen Novicki, the inventor of shock strips, which should be on every helmet. Why it's not remains a mystery to us, because you would think it would make helmets that much safer and decrease the impact that these guys have. So I still can't figure this thing out. But we look forward to having Doc back on the show with us next week. Another great friend and former Titans and Rams linebacker Will Witherspoon will be here, as will former Dolphins linebacker Dwight Hollier. And, Tony Collins is here with us every single week here on Thursday Night Tailgate. So we've got another really great show on tap for you next week. Already looking forward to that. We hope you'll come back and be a part of it with us. I want to remind you how you can follow us on social media. Well, please check out our Facebook page. Give us a like. That's important to us as well. Thursday Night Tailgate on Facebook and on Twitter. You can find me at CT-mascaro. Bob is at Bob_Lazzari, and the show is at TNT Podcast. Plus, also check out our website, ThursdayNightTailgate.com. You can stream or download any of our archive episodes for free, folks, by going online. Again, ThursdayNightTailgate.com. Bob, take us home, my friend.
Thank you, Chris, and have a great week, my friend. Our thanks also to our announcer, Joe Lajanusa, for the great job he does with our weekly intro and ads, and to James Brocato and all the guys from Painted Faces for our upcoming outro music. On behalf of myself and Chris, we thank everyone tonight for listening. We appreciate you all the most. Until next week, good night, Kevin. We miss you.